The Grand Plaza Hotel ballroom fell silent. Eleanor Miller sat in her wheelchair, watching as her husband, Victor, wrapped his arm around his pregnant mistress in front of 200 stunned guests. "I'd like to introduce you all to Olivia," Victor announced proudly. "Not just as our company's new creative director, but as the mother of my child and the future I've always dreamed of." Cameras flashed as Victor looked directly at Eleanor, his disabled wife of 12 years, with something between pity and disdain. "Sometimes life gives us a second chance at happiness," he continued, raising his champagne glass. But as tears welled in Eleanor's eyes, something unexpected happened. She smiled, and that smile sent a chill down Victor's spine. "Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from." Years earlier, Eleanor and Victor Miller were the golden couple of the architectural world. Their modern glass home overlooking the city perfectly reflected their success. He, the charismatic businessman who made deals happen. She, the brilliant architect whose designs won awards and changed skylines. They complemented each other perfectly, recalled Diana, Eleanor's former colleague. Victor knew how to sell Eleanor's vision, and Eleanor knew how to make Victor's promises reality. But everything changed on a rainy Tuesday in November. The accident at the Riverside development should have been impossible. Safety protocols were Eleanor's obsession, yet somehow a temporary platform collapsed while she was inspecting the 14th floor of their newest project. "The fall shattered her spine," explained Dr. Rosario, the neurologist who treated Eleanor. "We initially weren't sure if she would walk again. After 3 surgeries and months of painful rehabilitation, Eleanor could manage short distances with walking aids, but remained dependent on a wheelchair for daily life. Her once busy schedule of site visits and design meetings shrank to physical therapy appointments and doctor visits. And Victor, the man who had vowed to stand by her side in sickness and in health, began a subtle but unmistakable withdrawal. To the outside world, Victor Miller remained the devoted husband. He hired the best specialists, renovated their home for accessibility, and spoke movingly at charity galas about their journey. "My wife has shown incredible courage," he would say, his hand resting protectively on Eleanor's shoulder. "Her resilience inspires me every day." But behind closed doors, a different reality was emerging, one of cold silences, missed dinners, and growing resentment. The Berkeley Foundation's annual fundraiser was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over San Francisco's elite. Eleanor Miller sat near the edge of the grand ballroom, her wheelchair positioned at a table partially hidden behind a large floral arrangement. From her vantage point, she could observe her husband Victor commanding the room. At 42, he remained strikingly handsome, his salt and pepper hair and tailored tuxedo giving him the distinguished air of success. He moved effortlessly between groups, each laugh and handshake cementing business relationships worth millions. "He certainly knows how to work a room," remarked an older woman who had joined Eleanor at her table. "Your husband has the mayor eating out of his hand." Eleanor smiled politely. Victor's always been good with people. What she didn't say was how she had begun measuring the distance between them, not just the physical space across the ballroom, but the growing emotional chasm that had opened since her accident. They had met 15 years earlier at Cornell University's architecture program. Eleanor Chen, the serious student from a family of engineers, and Victor Miller, the charismatic scholarship student with big dreams and even bigger ambition. "He asked me to review his project," Eleanor later told her sister Elise. "It was terrible. All flash, no function. I told him his beautiful tower would collapse in the first strong wind." Instead of being offended, Victor had laughed and asked her to dinner. "Teach me," he'd said. "I want to learn from the best." Their romance bloomed quickly. Victor's charm balanced Eleanor's intensity. Her precision complemented his vision. By graduation, they were partners in every sense, launching Miller Chen Sustainable Design with nothing but student loans and determination. Their early projects were small, a restaurant renovation, an eco-friendly dental office, but their reputation grew steadily. Eleanor's innovative designs prioritized sustainability and accessibility long before they became industry buzzwords. Victor secured the clients and financing, his natural charisma opening doors that remained closed to many young architects. The watershed moment came 8 years ago, winning the commission for the Canopy, a mixed-use development that transformed an abandoned industrial site into an award-winning green community. "The Canopy put us on the map," Victor often said in interviews. That's when I knew we were going to change the world. Success brought wealth, recognition, and increasingly ambitious projects. The small firm expanded, becoming Miller Development Group. The name change, a subtle shift that Eleanor had initially resisted, but eventually accepted as good business. Their personal life seemed equally charmed. Weekends at their cabin in Sonoma. Vacations exploring architectural wonders across Europe and Asia. Plans for children postponed repeatedly for just one more big project, until those conversations gradually faded. At the gala, Eleanor checked her watch. It was nearly 10, and Victor had barely acknowledged her since their arrival. She watched as he chatted animatedly with Jessica Lang, the city planning commissioner, whose approval they needed for their newest development. Eleanor's phone buzzed with a text from Martina. Don't forget your 10 p.m. medication. How's the gala? Surviving the small talk? Eleanor smiled, grateful for her physical therapist's concern. Martina was one of the few bright spots in her post-accident life. Tough during their sessions, but unfailingly supportive beyond them. Watching Victor work his magic. She typed back, I'm practically invisible. Their loss, Martina replied immediately. Want me to come kidnap you? I make a very convincing medical emergency. Eleanor chuckled, drawing a curious glance from her table-mate. Tomorrow's session still at 2? She texted back. Yes, and wear comfortable clothes. We are trying something new. Eleanor was about to respond when she noticed Victor approaching with Commissioner Lang. And here's the creative genius behind our accessibility initiatives, Victor announced warmly, his hand settling on Eleanor's shoulder with practiced affection. My wife insists every Miller project must be accessible to everyone. Eleanor forced a smile. It's just good design. Buildings should work for all people. So admirable, the commissioner gushed. Victor was just telling me about your accident. Such a tragedy for someone so talented. Eleanor maintained her smile even as she registered Victor's narrative at work, casting her as the inspiring tragedy, her career spoken of in the past tense. I still consult on all our projects, Eleanor said firmly. In fact, I've been working on some modifications to the Westridge proposal that I'd love to discuss with your office. The commissioner looked momentarily confused, glancing at Victor, who smoothly interjected, Eleanor likes to keep her hand in things when her health permits. Now Jessica, about that height variance. And just like that, Eleanor was sidelined from her own project. She watched as Victor guided the commissioner away, already deep in technical discussions that once would have been Eleanor's domain. Later that night, as their driver helped Eleanor into their modified SUV, Victor checked his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. Draymond wants to meet for breakfast before the board presentation, he said, not looking up. I'll have Agnes bring your breakfast tray in the morning. I could come to the presentation, Eleanor suggested. It is our company. Victor's smile was thin. It's just financials. Terribly boring. Better you rest for your therapy session. At home, their modern mansion had been retrofitted with ramps and elevators after Eleanor's accident. What was once their showpiece of architectural innovation now felt to Eleanor like an elaborate cage. Victor helped her into the elevator with practiced efficiency, supportive but distant, like a nurse with a patient. In their bedroom, he laid out her nightgown and medication while she wheeled herself into their accessible bathroom. Staring at her reflection, Eleanor noted the changes 3 years had wrought. Still beautiful at 39, but her face had thinned, dark circles, permanent fixtures under her eyes. Her once athletic body, now altered by both injury and inactivity, felt like a stranger's. When she emerged, Victor was already in bed, scrolling through his phone. Martinelli confirmed the investment, he mentioned without looking up. 30 million for the Parkside development. That's wonderful, Eleanor said, struggling slightly as she transferred from her wheelchair to the bed. Victor didn't move to help, something that once would have shocked her but now felt routine. I'll be heading to Chicago next weekend to finalize details, he continued. Just 2 nights. Eleanor nodded, noting another business trip added to Victor's increasingly busy travel schedule. The Chicago team could come here, she suggested. Or I could come with you. I haven't traveled in months. Victor finally looked up from his phone, his expression a mixture of impatience and pity. Eleanor, be realistic. The logistics of traveling with your situation, it's complicated. The team needs my undivided attention. The word stung, but Eleanor had grown accustomed to such subtle dismissals. "Of course," she said quietly. "It makes sense." Victor reached over and patted her hand, a gesture that felt more patronizing than affectionate. "That's my practical girl. Now take your medication. You know how you struggle to sleep without it." Eleanor obediently swallowed the pills Victor handed her, wondering when she had become someone who accepted these small humiliations without protest. As Victor turned off his light and settled into sleep, Eleanor lay awake staring at the ceiling. Their bedroom, like their marriage, had been redesigned after her accident. Her adjustable hospital-grade bed, positioned for accessibility, separated from Victor's premium mattress by a discreet but unbridgeable gap. The next morning, Eleanor woke to an empty house. Victor had left early for his meeting with Draymond, leaving a handwritten note propped against the coffee pot. "Breakfast in fridge. Agnes comes at 10. Remember your pills." Eleanor crumpled the note, irritated by its presumptive tone. She made her own coffee, stronger than the weak brew Agnes prepared, and wheeled herself to Victor's home office. Since her accident, Eleanor had gradually been excluded from the daily operations of their company. Her architect's license remained active, but her designs were increasingly modified by the firm's growing team, with Victor's approval. She scanned Victor's immaculate desk, looking for the Westridge proposal she'd mentioned to Commissioner Lang. Nothing. The computer was password protected, and Eleanor realized with a jolt that she no longer knew Victor's password, something that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. She was about to leave when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry, but you deserve to know the truth about your husband." Eleanor stared at the message, her heart racing. Attached was a photo that would change everything. Victor, his arm wrapped intimately around a beautiful younger woman with a visibly pregnant belly, exiting what appeared to be a private medical clinic. The timestamp showed yesterday afternoon, when Victor had claimed to be in meetings preparing for the board presentation. The photograph burned in Eleanor's mind as she waited for Victor to return home. The pregnant woman's face was unfamiliar, but the look of tenderness on Victor's face was one Eleanor hadn't seen directed at her in years. When Victor finally arrived that evening, Eleanor had composed herself. The phone with the damning photograph tucked into her wheelchair pocket. "How was the board presentation?" she asked casually as he loosened his tie. "Successful. We secured the funding for the Westridge expansion." Victor poured himself a scotch, not offering Eleanor one as he once would have. "How was therapy?" "Enlightening," Eleanor replied. "Victor, who is Olivia?" The question hung in the air. Victor's hand paused mid-sip, the only indication that the name meant anything to him. "Olivia Rhodes," he said smoothly after a beat. "Our new project manager for Westridge. Why do you ask?" Eleanor held his gaze. "Is there something you want to tell me about your relationship with her?" Victor set down his glass with careful precision. "She's a talented professional I'm mentoring." "Eleanor, what is this about?" Without a word, Eleanor took out her phone and showed him the photograph. Victor's expression hardened, but he didn't appear particularly shocked. "You're having me followed now?" His voice was cold. "Someone sent this to me. I don't know who." Victor's laugh was humorless. "And you immediately jumped to the worst conclusion. That's your problem, Eleanor. You've become so bitter. She's pregnant, Victor. Yes, she is. And her husband is very excited about it." Victor's lie was delivered with practiced conviction. "I was accompanying her to her appointment because she felt faint at the office. As her mentor, I was concerned." Eleanor wanted to believe him. Part of her, the part that remembered the man who had once adored her, desperately needed his explanation to be true. "Her husband?" Eleanor repeated quietly. "Greg Rhodes. Works for Goldman. You met him at the Christmas party." Victor's details were specific, convincing. "Is that really what you think of me, Eleanor? That I would be carrying on with a married, pregnant woman?" Put that way, it sounded absurd. Eleanor felt doubt creeping in. "The person who sent this suggested—" "Who sent it?" Victor interrupted, suddenly alert. "Sounds like someone trying to cause trouble. Probably jealous of our success." When Eleanor admitted she didn't know, Victor nodded knowingly. "Anonymous accusations aren't worth your energy. Now I need to review some contracts before dinner." As Victor left the room, Eleanor felt a familiar disorientation, the sensation that perhaps she was the unreasonable one, seeing problems where none existed. It was a feeling that had grown increasingly common since her accident. But something about Victor's too-perfect explanation nagged at her. That night, she lay awake long after Victor had fallen asleep, her mind returning to small inconsistencies in his behavior over recent months. The next morning, Eleanor made a decision. If Victor was telling the truth, she had nothing to worry about. But if he wasn't, Agnes, she called to their housekeeper, I'd like to do some online shopping this afternoon. Could you help me set up my laptop in Victor's office? The light is better there. Once alone in Victor's office, Eleanor moved quickly. First, she positioned a small wireless camera she had ordered weeks ago for security purposes, hiding it among the books on Victor's shelf. Then she began searching through his desk drawers. Most contained ordinary business documents, but in the back of the bottom drawer, she found a small key she didn't recognize. Pocketing it, she continued her search until Agnes called her for lunch. Over the next week, Eleanor established a new routine. Each day, while Victor was at work, she reviewed the footage from the hidden camera, searching for anything unusual. Most evenings, Victor spent a few hours in his office reviewing documents or making calls. Nothing suspicious. Then came Tuesday night. Victor entered his office at his usual time, but locked the door, something he rarely did. Eleanor watched the live feed on her tablet as he made a call, his voice too low to hear clearly, but his expression was unmistakably intimate, his smile private. After the call, Victor unlocked his desk with the small key Eleanor had discovered, the same drawer that had appeared empty during her search. He removed what looked like a small black book and made several notes before returning it and relocking the drawer. The next day, while Victor was at a construction site, Eleanor used the key she had found. The black book was a separate ledger, documenting transfers to offshore accounts not mentioned in any of their joint financial statements. Large sums, hundreds of thousands of dollars, moving to numbered accounts in the Cayman Islands. More disturbing were the notes in the margins. O apartment deposit, O car, O medical, Olivia. Eleanor photographed every page with her phone before returning the book exactly as she had found it. That same afternoon, she called Diana, her former colleague from their early days at Miller Chen. Eleanor, it's been ages. Diana sounded genuinely pleased to hear from her. How are you doing? Managing, Eleanor replied. Diana, I need to ask you something confidentially. Do you know anything about a project manager named Olivia Rhodes? A pause. Olivia. Young, stunning, always dressed impeccably. About 30? That sounds right. She's been at Miller for about a year now. Rising star. Diana hesitated. Eleanor, there's been talk about Victor. He seems particularly invested in her career. Late meetings, private lunches. The office gossip machine works overtime whenever they're together. Diana sighed. I didn't want to say anything without evidence. After everything you've been through. Eleanor's suspicions crystallized into certainty. Thank you for being honest. One more thing. Is she married to someone named Greg Rhodes? Diana's laugh confirmed what Eleanor already knew. Olivia, no, she's definitely single. Makes a point of mentioning it, actually. After ending the call, Eleanor felt a strange calm descend. The pain of confirmation was mixed with validation. She wasn't imagining things or being paranoid. That evening, she watched Victor more carefully, noting how he checked his phone whenever it buzzed, the slight smile when reading certain messages. After dinner, he announced another business trip for the following week. 3 days in Seattle for the McKinley project, he said casually. How interesting, Eleanor replied, keeping her voice neutral. I thought the McKinley presentation wasn't until next month. Victor barely hesitated. They moved up the timeline. These developers are always impatient. Another lie. Eleanor had seen an email on Victor's computer screen just that morning, confirming the McKinley presentation for its original date. After Victor retired to his office, Eleanor wheeled herself to the guest room and opened her laptop. It was time to be methodical. She created a secure document and began listing everything she knew for certain. Victor was lying about Olivia's marital status. He was transferring large sums of money to undisclosed accounts. Some of these funds appeared to be supporting Olivia. He was lying about his travel schedule. She needed more evidence, but her instincts told her this was just the beginning. The Victor she had married would never have betrayed her this way. When had he changed? Or had he always been capable of this deception, and she had simply been too in love to see it? The next morning, Eleanor called Martina, her physical therapist. "I need a favor," she said without preamble. "Something outside your professional duties." "I'm intrigued," Martina replied, "and concerned." Eleanor hesitated, then decided complete honesty was necessary. "I need you to help me follow my husband. I believe he's having an affair." A silence. Then, "I'll pick you up at 7, wear dark clothes." That night, Martina drove them to an upscale restaurant in her modest Honda, parking where they could see the entrance. Sure enough, at 8:15, Victor arrived, not in his usual Tesla, but in an Uber. 10 minutes later, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up and Olivia emerged, her pregnancy now unmistakable, even beneath her elegant coat. Eleanor watched through binoculars as Victor greeted Olivia with a kiss that was decidedly not mentorship, his hand lingering on her pregnant belly with obvious pride. "I've seen enough," Eleanor said quietly. Martina squeezed her hand. "What now?" "Now," Eleanor said, her voice hard as steel. "I find out how deep this goes." Over the next 2 weeks, Eleanor built her case methodically. She discovered credit card statements showing jewelry purchases from Tiffany that she had never received. She found reservations for a weekend getaway in Napa during Victor's supposed Seattle trip. Most disturbingly, she uncovered documents for a luxury penthouse purchased in Victor's name alone, not listed among their marital assets. The property was in the Archer, their newest residential tower still under construction. Then came the most painful discovery of all. While searching Victor's home office for more financial records, Eleanor found a small velvet box hidden beneath a false bottom of his desk drawer. Inside was not jewelry, but a sonogram image labeled Baby Miller, 24 weeks, with Olivia's name clearly printed at the top. Eleanor was staring at the image, tears blurring her vision, when she heard Victor's voice behind her. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" She turned to find him in the doorway, his expression a combination of rage and panic. "Finding the truth," she replied, holding up the sonogram. "Your mentee is carrying your child." Victor's face hardened. "You had no right to go through my things." "No right." Eleanor's voice rose. "I'm your wife. That sonogram should have been our baby. This is exactly why I kept it from you," Victor snapped. "Look at you. Emotional, hysterical. You're not stable enough to handle the truth. Not stable." Eleanor was incredulous. "You're having an affair, moving money offshore, buying property I know nothing about, and I'm not stable." Victor stepped closer, his voice lowering to a dangerous calm. "Eleanor, you haven't been well since the accident. The doctors warned me about potential psychological effects from your trauma and medications. Paranoia, delusions of persecution. Don't you dare," Eleanor whispered. "Don't you dare try to use my disability to cover your lies." But Victor continued, his tone shifting to a concern so convincing it was almost believable. "I've been worried about you for months. These conspiracy theories, the hidden cameras." "Yes, I found it," he added, seeing her surprise. "Eleanor, you need help." "What I need is a divorce lawyer," she replied, her voice shaking with rage. Something flashed in Victor's eyes. "Calculation, not pain, if that's what you think is best. But I should warn you, any judge will take your mental state into consideration when dividing assets, especially given how unpredictable you've been since the accident. The threat was implicit but clear. Challenge me and I'll make you look unstable." After Victor left, Eleanor sat shaking in her wheelchair, the sonogram still clutched in her hand. She had expected anger, perhaps even relief at being discovered. But this calculated gaslighting was something far more sinister. He was actively trying to make her believe she was losing her mind. That night, Eleanor overheard Victor on the phone in his office, the door not quite closed. "She found the sonogram," he was saying quietly. "No, don't worry. I've been documenting her erratic behavior for months. My lawyer says we have options. Yes, a psychological evaluation would be the first step. Of course, I'll make sure you and the baby are taken care of." Eleanor wheeled herself silently back to her room, a cold realization washing over her. Victor wasn't just planning to leave her. He was laying the groundwork to potentially have her declared mentally incompetent. The implications were staggering. Control of her medical decisions, her finances, her very freedom. For the first time since discovering Victor's betrayal, genuine fear gripped her. This was no longer just about infidelity. It was about survival. The next morning, Eleanor woke with a clear head and a decision. If Victor wanted war, she would need to be strategic about her response. Acting emotionally would only play into his narrative about her mental instability. She began with her medications. For months, she had accepted without question the pills Victor provided each morning and evening, a combination of pain management, muscle relaxants, and sleep aids prescribed by various specialists. "Martina," she asked during their next therapy session, "would you look at something for me?" She showed Martina the collection of pill bottles from her bathroom cabinet. Martina examined each one carefully, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "Eleanor, how long have you been taking this combination?" "About 8 months. Why?" Martina pointed to 2 of the bottles. "This muscle relaxant at this dosage would make anyone foggy and disoriented, and this one isn't typically prescribed for your type of injury anymore. It's known to cause memory issues and confusion in long-term use." A cold feeling settled in Eleanor's stomach. "Victor manages my medication schedule. He says it's too complicated for me to track." Martina's face hardened. "I think it's time you see a different neurologist, one you choose yourself." Dr. Sarah Winters, a neurologist recommended by Martina, reviewed Eleanor's medical history with growing concern. "Mrs. Miller, several of these medications are contraindicated for your condition, and the dosages are unusually high." She looked up from her tablet. "Who has been overseeing your prescription regimen?" "My primary physician, Dr. Harris," Eleanor replied. "He works closely with my husband." Dr. Winters frowned. "I see multiple prescriptions from different specialists, but limited consultation between them." She hesitated. "With your permission, I'd like to run some blood work and develop a more appropriate treatment plan." The test results confirmed Dr. Winters' suspicions. Eleanor's blood showed higher levels of certain medications than prescribed, suggesting someone had been increasing her dosages without medical authorization. This combination would cause fatigue, confusion, and memory issues, Dr. Winters explained gently. "It may have even been hindering your physical recovery." With the doctor's guidance, Eleanor began carefully tapering off the unnecessary medications. The process was uncomfortable, but within 2 weeks she noticed significant differences. Her mind felt sharper, her energy improved, and most tellingly, her physical therapy sessions showed measurable progress. "Jove advanced more in the past 10 days than in the previous 3 months, Martina noted, during a particularly successful session, as Eleanor managed to stand between parallel bars for a full minute. Meanwhile, Eleanor continued building her case against Victor, now with a clearer mind and renewed purpose. She hired a private investigator recommended by Dr. Winters, who had unfortunately seen similar cases of medical manipulation in her practice. The investigator, Clara Jenkins, was efficient and discreet. Within days, she provided Eleanor with a comprehensive timeline of Victor's relationship with Olivia Rhodes, including evidence they had been involved for over 16 months, predating Eleanor's accident. "They met at a development conference in Chicago," Clara explained, showing Eleanor photographs from the event. "According to my sources, she was hired at Miller Development less than a month later." Eleanor stared at the images of Victor and Olivia at a hotel bar, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. The timestamp showed February of last year, 3 months before her accident. "There's something else you should know," Clara continued, hesitation in her voice. "I looked into the inspection records for the construction site where your accident occurred. The temporary platform that collapsed had been flagged for reinforcement the previous week. The work order was signed off as completed, but there's no record of the actual repairs being done." Eleanor frowned. "That happens sometimes on busy sites. Documentation gets ahead of the actual work." "True," Clara agreed. "But the signature on the completion form, it belongs to Victor Miller." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "Are you suggesting Victor knew the platform was unsafe when I visited the site?" Clara chose her words carefully. "I'm saying the timing is concerning. The accident happened 3 weeks after Miss Rhodes was hired, on a site that Victor had personally signed off as safe. Despite documented structural concerns, the implication was almost too monstrous to contemplate. Eleanor had always assumed her fall was a tragic accident. The idea that Victor might have knowingly allowed her to use unsafe equipment was unthinkable. Yet as she reviewed the evidence Clara had gathered, a disturbing pattern emerged. After her accident, Victor had taken control of her medical care with surprising efficiency. He had insisted on specific doctors, managed all her medications, and gradually isolated her from colleagues and friends. "Here's too much for you right now," he would say whenever she mentioned visiting the office or attending industry events. "Focus on your recovery." Eleanor reached out to Diana again, this time with more specific questions about her attempted return to work 6 months after the accident. "I always thought it was strange," Diana admitted. "You were scheduled to come back part-time. Your office was ready, and then suddenly Victor announced you'd had a setback and needed more time." "I don't remember any setback," Eleanor said slowly. "Victor told me the accessibility accommodations weren't ready yet." Diana's silence spoke volumes. "Eleanor, the accommodations were completed 2 weeks ahead of schedule. I oversaw them myself." The picture becoming clearer was deeply disturbing. Victor hadn't just been unfaithful. He had been systematically undermining Eleanor's recovery and independence while creating a narrative of her being too disabled and mentally unstable to function professionally. With Martina's help, Eleanor connected with a rehabilitation specialist who designed an intensive therapy program away from Victor's watchful eye. 3 times a week, while Victor believed she was attending art therapy sessions, suggested by him and supposedly supervised by a therapist who was actually Martina's cousin, Eleanor was working to rebuild her strength and mobility. Progress was slow but steady. As the unnecessary medications left her system, Eleanor found she could stand for longer periods and even take several steps with just a cane. Achievements Victor had repeatedly told her were unlikely given her condition. "He was never at the doctor appointments, was he?" Eleanor asked Martina one day. "The ones where they supposedly told him my prognosis was poor." Martina shook her head. "I reviewed your complete medical records. Several specialists noted good potential for significant recovery with aggressive physical therapy. Therapy Victor repeatedly cancelled or rescheduled." Armed with this knowledge, Eleanor contacted Rafael Dominguez, an attorney specializing in elder abuse and financial fraud. Though she wasn't elderly, Rafael explained that many of the same legal protections applied to disabled individuals being exploited by caregivers or family members. "What you're describing is a textbook case of medical gaslighting and financial exploitation," Rafael explained during their confidential meeting. "The medication manipulation alone is potentially criminal." "I need to be careful," Eleanor explained. "Victor has significant resources and connections, and he's been documenting my supposed mental instability to use against me." Rafael nodded grimly. "Then we document everything and prepare for the right moment. Most importantly, we ensure your physical safety while we build the case." Safety had become a genuine concern. As Eleanor reduced her medication and became more clear-headed, Victor's behavior grew increasingly controlling. He installed a security system that sent him alerts when exterior doors opened. He began checking her pill bottles to ensure she was compliant with her medication regimen, forcing Eleanor to develop elaborate systems to maintain her deception. Through Clara's investigation, Eleanor discovered something even more alarming. Victor had consulted with a lawyer specializing in conservatorships for mentally incapacitated adults. "He's laying the groundwork to take legal control of your affairs," Rafael warned when Eleanor shared this information. "We need to accelerate our timeline." Eleanor agreed but insisted they be thorough. "I want him exposed completely, not just the affair but everything. The financial fraud, the medical manipulation, and possibly his role in my accident." The final piece fell into place when Clara located Marcus Jones, a former security guard from the construction site where Eleanor's accident occurred. Initially reluctant to speak, Marcus finally agreed to meet Eleanor at Raphael's office. "I wasn't supposed to be there that day," Marcus explained nervously. "I switched shifts with another guard. That's why he came to me afterward." "He?" Eleanor prompted. "Your husband. 2 days after your accident, he asked me to delete specific footage from the security server." Marcus couldn't meet Eleanor's eyes. "He said it showed you in a private moment, upset, crying, and he wanted to protect your dignity. Offered me $5,000 cash. Did you delete it?" Raphael asked. Marcus nodded. "But I'm not completely stupid. So I made a copy first. Insurance, you know. Never thought I'd need it. The footage, stored on an old flash drive Marcus had kept hidden, was grainy but clear enough. It showed Victor on the construction site early on the morning of Eleanor's accident, examining the temporary platform. The timestamp was 6:42 a.m., almost 3 hours before Eleanor's scheduled inspection. More damning was the second clip from the same morning. Victor speaking with the site foreman, pointing to the platform, then handing him an envelope. The foreman nodded, pocketed the envelope, and walked away. No work was done on the platform. Eleanor watched the footage in horrified silence. While it wasn't definitive proof that Victor had intentionally caused her accident, it clearly showed he knew the platform was unsafe and did nothing to prevent her from using it. "This crosses into potential criminal territory," Raphael said quietly. "Negligence at minimum, attempted manslaughter at worst." Eleanor felt strangely calm as the final pieces aligned. "We need copies of everything. Secure copies Victor can't access or destroy." As they developed their strategy, Eleanor learned from Diana that Victor was planning the company's annual gala, traditionally held at a hotel downtown, at their home instead. "He says it's to make it easier for you to attend," Diana explained, doubt evident in her voice. Eleanor immediately recognized the opportunity this presented. "When exactly is this happening?" 6 weeks from Saturday. Victor's being very hands-on with the planning. Through careful observation and strategic questions, Eleanor discovered the true purpose of hosting the gala at their home. Victor planned to announce Olivia as both his new business partner and publicly introduce her as the mother of his child, effectively declaring his new future while Eleanor was present. "It's breathtakingly cruel," Martina said when Eleanor shared this discovery. "To humiliate you in your own home in front of colleagues and friends." Eleanor's smile was tight. "Actually, it's perfect. He's creating exactly the stage I need." With the gala 3 weeks away, Eleanor moved into high gear, coordinating with her growing team of allies. Raphael prepared legal documents, while Clara gathered the final pieces of evidence they needed. Martina intensified Eleanor's physical therapy, focusing on building the stamina she would need for what was to come. "We need to be methodical," Eleanor insisted during a strategy session in Raphael's office. "Victor is expecting me to either break down or lash out. He's counting on emotional reactions he can use to support his narrative about my mental state." Raphael nodded approvingly. "The evidence we've gathered is compelling, but timing and presentation will be crucial." Eleanor had reconnected with her twin sister, Elise, from whom she'd grown distant in recent years, a separation she now recognized as part of Victor's systematic isolation tactics. "He always said you were too busy with your cybersecurity projects to visit," Eleanor explained during their tearful reunion. Elise's face hardened. "I tried to visit many times after your accident. Victor always said you were too tired or in too much pain to see anyone." She squeezed Eleanor's hand. "I knew something was wrong when my birthday gifts to you went unacknowledged. We've never missed each other's birthdays." With her background in digital security, Elise proved invaluable to their efforts. She helped Eleanor access Victor's password-protected files, revealing a trove of incriminating information. Emails discussing the offshore accounts where he'd hidden millions in company profits, correspondence with Olivia dating back to before Eleanor's accident, communications with doctors instructing them to emphasize Eleanor's limitations rather than potential recovery, and research on medications known to cause cognitive impairment. Most damningly, they found detailed plans for the penthouse being prepared for Olivia, paid for with funds from their charitable foundation. "He's been embezzling from our foundation." Eleanor was stunned. The Miller Foundation for Accessible Design had been her passion project, funding ramps, elevators, and other modifications to make public spaces accessible to everyone. "According to these records, he's diverted over $2 million in the past year alone," Elise confirmed, scrolling through financial documents. The money supposedly went to accessibility projects that were never completed. The depth of Victor's betrayal seemed bottomless. Beyond the affair and medical manipulation, he had corrupted Eleanor's life's work, using funds meant to help disabled people to instead finance his new life with Olivia. Eleanor insisted on maintaining absolute secrecy as they prepared. She continued taking the placebos Martina had prepared in place of her actual medications, allowing Victor to believe she remained foggy and dependent. She feigned excitement about the upcoming gala, even offering suggestions for the menu and decorations. "I want everything to be perfect," she told Victor with carefully calibrated enthusiasm. "It's been so long since I've been part of a company event." Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's the spirit, Eleanor. It's important for everyone to see us together as a united front." The irony of his statement wasn't lost on Eleanor. 2 weeks before the gala, Eleanor met with Camilla Vega, an investigative journalist known for her exposés on corporate corruption. Raphael had insisted on this connection, arguing that media coverage would provide an additional layer of protection. Once this is public, it becomes much harder for Victor to retaliate or spin the narrative, Raphael explained. Camilla was instantly engaged by Eleanor's story. "This goes beyond a personal betrayal," she noted, reviewing the evidence. "The foundation fraud, construction safety violations, potential medical malpractice, it's systematic corruption with real victims." "I want to be very clear," Eleanor emphasized. "This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability and ensuring Victor can't do this to anyone else." Camilla studied Eleanor carefully. "Your restraint is remarkable, considering what you've endured." Eleanor's smile was tight. "I've had a lot of time to think while sitting in this wheelchair." As the gala approached, Eleanor worked with Elise to ensure their technological preparations were flawless. Hidden cameras were strategically placed throughout the main level of their home. The presentation system Victor planned to use for his company announcement was subtly modified to allow Eleanor to take control when needed. "He won't be able to shut it down remotely," Elise assured her. "Once you initiate the sequence, it will complete regardless of what anyone does." Victor remained oblivious to these preparations, interpreting Eleanor's increased energy as excitement about returning to social life. If he noticed she was taking slightly longer trips around the house in her wheelchair, or occasionally standing to reach something from a shelf, he didn't comment, perhaps assuming his gaslighting had been so effective that she wouldn't dare hope for substantial improvement. 1 week before the gala, Eleanor met with a city building inspector, Maria Gonzalez, who had reviewed the documents regarding safety violations at Victor's construction sites. "These aren't minor oversights," Maria confirmed, her expression grave. "We're talking about systematic disregard for basic safety protocols. If these allegations prove accurate, Miller Development could face significant penalties." Eleanor reviewed the documents. "I want this handled through proper channels," she insisted. "My personal situation aside, people's lives are at risk." The night before the gala, Eleanor sat in her studio, the one room in their home that remained truly hers. Once filled with architectural models and design plans, it now contained her careful documentation of Victor's betrayal. Every piece of evidence was backed up in multiple secure locations, with copies in Raphael's possession, Elise's encrypted servers, and a safe deposit box accessible only to Eleanor. Her phone buzzed with a text from Martina, "Everything in place for tomorrow." "Are you ready?" Eleanor looked at herself in the mirror. The woman who stared back was no longer the broken, confused person Victor had cultivated. Her eyes were clear, her posture straight even while seated in her wheelchair. "Ready," she texted back, then added, "He has no idea what's coming." That night, Victor was unusually attentive, bringing Eleanor a cup of her favorite tea as she prepared for bed. "Big day tomorrow," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Are you excited to see everyone?" Eleanor took the tea, noting the familiar slight bitterness that suggested he had added her medication directly to the drink, a trick he had perfected. "Very excited," she replied, pretending to sip while letting the liquid fall into the potted plant beside her bed. "It feels like the beginning of something new." Victor's smile widened. "That's exactly right. A new chapter." As he turned to leave, Eleanor called after him softly. "Victor, do you remember what you said to me the day you proposed? About why you loved me?" He paused, momentarily thrown. "I said many things. You said you loved my mind, that I was the smartest person you'd ever met." Eleanor's smile was gentle. "I've been thinking about that lately." Victor's expression flickered with something, perhaps regret, before his mask returned. "Get some rest, Eleanor. Tomorrow is an important day." As the door closed, Eleanor whispered, "Yes, it is. The day of the gala arrived. Professional decorators had transformed their home." Eleanor chose a midnight blue gown. Victor questioned her choice. Are you sure that's appropriate? Glancing at her wheelchair. I want to wear something that reminds everyone of who I am, Eleanor replied. By 6, Eleanor positioned herself in the salon. Victor moved confidently, directing staff. Are we confirmed for 8:30? She overheard him ask his assistant. Yes, Mr. Miller. The car is picking up Miss Rhodes at 8:15. Victor nodded. Perfect. Make sure Eleanor's wheelchair is positioned near the back. The casual cruelty of his instruction confirmed Eleanor's knowledge. Tonight was designed to sideline her. Guests began arriving at 7. Victor greeted each one warmly. He wheeled Eleanor out, his hand possessive on her shoulder. Eleanor has been so looking forward to seeing everyone, he'd say. Eleanor played her part subdued, smiling appreciatively. Staff positioned her wheelchair in a corner, partially obscured. By 8:30 the gala was in full swing, nearly 200 guests filling their home. At 8:40 a car pulled up. Victor greeted Olivia, resplendent in a gold gown, kissing her cheek with familiar intimacy. The room quieted as they entered, guests noticing the pregnant newcomer and the proprietary way Victor introduced her, their eyes darting towards Eleanor. At 90, Victor clinked his glass for attention, moving to the small stage where a projection screen displayed the Miller Development logo. Friends, colleagues, esteemed partners, he began, his voice confident. Thank you for joining us in our home for this special evening. Eleanor noted his deliberate use of our home, maintaining the facade. Miller Development has always been about vision, Victor continued. Tonight I'm excited to share our newest vision. The screen shifted to renderings of the horizon. The horizon represents our future, Victor declared. A future that embraces innovation, sustainability, and new leadership. He gestured toward Olivia, inviting her to the stage. It's my pleasure to introduce Olivia Rhodes, who joins Miller Development as our new creative director, and my partner. Applause filled the room, though many guests looked uncomfortable. Victor placed his arm around Olivia's waist. Olivia brings fresh perspective and brilliant design sensibility. The irony was staggering, but tonight is about more than business, Victor continued, his voice softening. It's about honesty and new beginnings. The room grew quiet. Life takes unexpected turns, Victor said, looking directly at Eleanor. Sometimes it brings challenges that change our path entirely. Eleanor maintained perfect composure. Eleanor's accident 3 years ago changed both our lives profoundly, he said, his expression a masterclass in performative compassion. But life also brings unexpected joy, Victor continued, turning to Olivia. Sometimes we're offered a second chance at happiness. He took Olivia's hand, placing it over her pregnant belly. Olivia and I are expecting a child together in 3 months, a son who represents the future I've always dreamed of. The room erupted in confused reactions. All eyes turned to Eleanor, expecting a breakdown. Instead, she smiled and began wheeling herself toward the stage. Eleanor, Victor said, warning in his voice. I'd like to say something. Eleanor interrupted, her voice clear and strong. Victor's face flickered with uncertainty, but he offered her the microphone. Eleanor positioned her wheelchair center stage. First, I want to congratulate Victor and Olivia, she began calmly. A child is always a blessing, Olivia flushed. I've known about their relationship for some time, Eleanor continued, just as I've known about the penthouse Victor purchased for them using funds from our charitable foundation. Victor stepped forward. Eleanor, you're upset. I'm not upset, Victor. I'm finally clear-headed, Eleanor addressed the audience. Clear-headed, because I've spent 2 months weaning myself off the unnecessary medications Victor has been giving me. Medications that kept me confused, weak, and dependent. The room fell silent. Eleanor activated a remote. The screen switched to her medical records. These are my actual records, she explained. The screen split. And these are the modified versions Victor provided my care team, increasing dosages. Victor's face drained of color. This is what I was concerned about, he said loudly. Eleanor has been experiencing paranoid delusions. My doctors? Eleanor interrupted. The specialists you selected and met with privately? The ones who received instructions about emphasizing my limitations. The screen showed his damning emails, but the medication was just one part of a larger plan, Eleanor continued. The projection shifted to financial records. Over the past 2 years, Victor has diverted more than $8 million from our company and charitable foundation. Draymond Jefferson stood up. "Victor, is this accurate?" Before Victor could respond, Eleanor continued. "Perhaps most disturbing was discovering Victor's role in my accident." The screen showed the security footage, Victor examining the unsafe platform, then paying the foreman. "This footage was deleted," Eleanor explained. Fortunately, a conscientious security guard made a backup. Victor lunged toward her. "Enough! You're delusional!" Several guests restrained him. "I'm not confused, Victor," Eleanor replied calmly. "Not anymore." Then, in the moment she had been preparing for, Eleanor engaged the brake on her wheelchair, placed her hands on the armrests, and slowly, deliberately stood up. A collective gasp filled the room. She took a step, then another, removing a folding cane. "Thanks to proper medical care, I've regained significantly more function than Victor wanted anyone to know was possible." Victor's face contorted. "This is a performance." "I can walk with assistance," Eleanor corrected. "I can stand. I can think clearly. All things you worked hard to prevent." She turned to the audience. "I'm sharing this not for vengeance, but for accountability." As if on cue, the door opened to admit several individuals in suits. "Mr. Miller," announced a stern-faced woman, "we need to speak with you regarding allegations of wire fraud and embezzlement." The gala dissolved into chaos. Victor was escorted away. Olivia, pale and shaken, approached Eleanor. "I didn't know." "My issue isn't with you or your child," Eleanor said. As the last guest left, Eleanor returned to her wheelchair, fatigued but triumphant. Martina appeared. "You were magnificent." Eleanor looked around. "It's strange," she mused. "I spent 3 years trapped in this chair while Victor walked free. Now I can stand, and he's the one whose freedom is in jeopardy." 1 month later, Camila Vega's interview with Eleanor aired, reshaping the public narrative. Eleanor sat in her bright studio, her cane resting beside her. She wasn't just a victim. She was a strategist who had meticulously reclaimed her life. "I think it's important to share this story," she told Camila, "for anyone who might be experiencing something similar." The interview detailed the gaslighting, the medical manipulation, and the financial exploitation, sparking a national conversation. "Many have called your gala confrontation the perfect revenge," Camilla noted. "It wasn't about revenge," Eleanor stated firmly. "It was about truth and accountability. Victor didn't just betray me personally. He violated professional ethics, endangered workers, and misappropriated charitable funds." The interview covered the multiple federal charges Victor faced: wire fraud, embezzlement, financial crimes. The district attorney was still investigating charges related to her accident. "Victor maintains his innocence regarding your fall," Camilla said. Eleanor nodded. "The evidence isn't conclusive on that point, but the pattern of behavior afterward, taking control of my medical care, isolating me, manipulating my medication, speaks volumes." After the interview, Eleanor focused on rebuilding. The Miller Foundation was restructured with a new board and strict oversight. Miller Development was renamed Chen Design Group, honoring Eleanor's heritage and her core design philosophy. All existing contracts were honored, but the company's focus shifted back to sustainable, accessible architecture. Across town, Victor's world had crumbled. His assets were frozen, his reputation shattered. Former colleagues refused his calls. The plea deal his attorney advised was his only viable option. The evidence was overwhelming. Olivia, having learned the full extent of his deception, had cooperated with investigators and moved back to her hometown, determined to raise her child far from the scandal. Eleanor's physical recovery progressed steadily. Dr. Winters was optimistic. "The human body is remarkably resilient," she said, "as is the human spirit, evidently." 3 months later, the Chen Design Group unveiled its first major project, the Phoenix Center, a state-of-the-art rehabilitation facility for patients with spinal injuries. "Every aspect of this building is designed to support recovery while maintaining dignity," Eleanor explained at the press conference. The center was funded by assets recovered from Victor's fraudulent activities, a fact that gave her deep satisfaction. Martina had joined as the rehabilitation director, their friendship evolving into a powerful professional partnership. Eleanor had also reconnected with her sister Elise, who moved back to San Francisco. "He always scheduled something important whenever you planned to visit," Eleanor recalled. I can't believe I didn't see the pattern. Manipulation is subtle, Elise reminded her. He isolated you gradually. With Elise's encouragement, Eleanor began writing a book about her experience, a guide to recognizing the warning signs of coercive control. It's the small concessions that are most dangerous, she wrote. Each one makes the next easier to accept, until one day you find yourself living someone else's version of your life. 6 months later, Victor's legal proceedings concluded. He accepted a plea deal that included significant prison time, financial restitution, and the permanent surrender of his licenses. The evidence of financial crimes was too strong to fight. At his sentencing, Eleanor delivered a powerful victim impact statement. Victor Miller didn't just betray his wife, she stated. He betrayed his profession's ethical standards, his company's mission, and the trust of every person who believed in our commitment to creating spaces that empower. She concluded with unexpected grace. I hope that during his incarceration, Mr. Miller will reflect on the difference between success and significance, between building a fortune and building a legacy worthy of respect. Afterward, reporters asked how she felt. Justice isn't about vengeance, she replied. It's about accountability and restoration. The funds Victor stole are being returned to the foundation. That matters more than the length of his sentence. 1 year later, the Architectural Awards at Lincoln Center marked Eleanor's full return to professional prominence. She walked to the podium slowly but independently with her cane, greeted by a standing ovation that acknowledged both her work and her resilience. Architecture has always been about problem-solving, she began her acceptance speech, about recognizing constraints and finding beauty within them, not despite them. She glanced at the front row, where Martina, Elise, and Diana sat beaming. My experience has deepened my understanding of how profoundly our physical environments affect our sense of capability. Good design isn't about accommodating disability. It's about recognizing the full spectrum of human ability and creating spaces where everyone can thrive. The project being honored was an inclusive housing community built on the site where Victor had planned his luxury development. It incorporated universal design principles and, most significantly, a training center for disabled architects. The Eleanor Chen Scholarship for Inclusive Design, she announced, will ensure our profession continues to benefit from diverse perspectives, including those who navigate the world differently. After the ceremony, Eleanor visited Victor in prison, a meeting he had requested several times. It was for closure, not reconciliation. He was a diminished figure, his charisma gone. Thank you for coming, he said. I wasn't sure you would. Neither was I, she admitted. An uncomfortable silence passed. I've had a lot of time to think, he said. I destroyed something valuable. Not just our marriage, but the partnership we built. Eleanor offered no absolution. Why, Victor? Was I not enough after the accident? It wasn't about you not being enough, he said, his voice pained. It was about me. Everyone saw me as the devoted husband. It gave me a role, an identity. But secretly you resented it, Eleanor finished. Yes, he admitted. And once I started down that path with Olivia, maintaining both lives required more deception. The medications gave me control when I felt I was losing it. His honesty was years too late. Eleanor stood to leave, her independent movement catching his eye. You look well, he said. The physical therapy must be working. It is, she confirmed, though it would have worked better years ago without your interference. As she prepared to depart, he asked the question she expected. Can you ever forgive me? Eleanor considered this carefully. Forgiveness isn't something you're owed, Victor. It's something I might eventually grant myself. The freedom to move forward without carrying the weight of what you did. She left the prison feeling lighter, having faced him on her own terms, on her own strength. That evening, Eleanor sat in the garden of her new home, a space designed for her needs and aesthetic. She had sold the glass mansion and its painful memories. She reviewed plans for a new intergenerational housing project. Her phone buzzed. A text from Martina. Phoenix Center just admitted its 100th patient. Celebration dinner tomorrow. Eleanor smiled. Victor had intended the gala to be her public humiliation. Instead, it became her rebirth. She still used her wheelchair when needed, seeing it not as a limitation but a tool. Her disability was a reality, but it no longer defined her. Yes to dinner, she texted back, and yes to celebration. We have much to be grateful for. As darkness fell, she looked at the stars. The path forward was hers to determine. That freedom was the sweetest victory of all. Her story was a testament to the fact that resilience often grows from our deepest wounds, and true strength emerges only after we've been broken. Hit the like button if you found Eleanor's journey powerful, and subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience, justice, and human courage. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss a new upload. In the comments below, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed or experienced gaslighting? What were the subtle signs that something wasn't right? Your insights might help someone else recognize a similar situation.